Many thanks for joining us in another episode of Gist Nigeria from the BBC and Channels Television. Here we bring you the gist of the stories that matter to you. I am Wali Fakile. Let's kick off with our top story. For decades, Nigeria has seen a worsening housing crisis that is making home ownership a fleeting illusion for many. Despite programs and policy adjustments by authorities, statistics shows that there still exists 28 million housing deficits across the country. In fact, real estate experts say the deficit could be as high as 50 million, depending on the indices of data collection. In this story, Gist Nigeria's Ayuba Ilya visits 3 major Nigerian cities to tell stories of ordinary Nigerians while holding the National Housing Fund to account.
An ever-rising urban population in Nigeria means there's an increasing demand for shelter.
In the ranking of man's social needs, shelter is next to food.
The Central Bank of Nigeria says only 10% of Nigerians who own to desire a home can afford it.
Even those people who earn as civil servants cannot be able to afford good housing within the city center.
Despite several housing schemes, the challenges associated with owning a home in Nigeria's urban centers have steadily climbed as access to mortgage remains a challenge.
When we are talking of affordable housing, we cannot go to the bank and borrow at 32 to 36% interest rate, and you still expect us to provide affordable houses.
For decades, owning a home has always been beyond the reach of majority of Nigeria's over 200 million people. In 1992, the National Housing Fund, NHF, was set up to provide affordable housing for these Nigerians. The fund is managed by the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria and is funded by contributions from public and private sector employees as well as self-employed Nigerians. In 25 years, the NHF has funded the construction and acquisition of only 18,000 housing units, a far cry from the overwhelming demand for millions of affordable houses across Nigeria. Olamikposi Adebayo says, after working in the formal sector for 2 decades, owning a home through the NHF has become a pipe dream.
I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. Let me just pull out of this NHF and focus on something else. If I want to build a house, let me just try to raise money and build a house.
Lagos is second among top 5 urban Nigerian cities with the highest housing needs after Abuja, the country's capital. Habila Kaid lives in Abuja. After working for 12 years and contributing to the NHF, he tells Gist Nigeria he couldn't meet the requirement to access a loan for the house he had planned to acquire.
They were asking for 10% of the total money, total worth of the property. For a 3-bedroom flat, they were asking for 21 million naira.
Although the NHF contributions for workers in the private sector is no longer mandatory, the processes of securing a government housing loan is cumbersome for many.
To get CFO, to get building plan, all these things, it's not easy.
Nigeria here, it doesn't work.
National Housing Fund, I've heard about it before, but I don't believe it.
NHF contributors can access up to 90% of the amount required for the purchase, self-construction, renovation of their houses with no more than 6% interest rates. Now, to apply for the housing loan, contributors with a steady income are required to register with a primary mortgage bank and must have contributed 2.5% of their monthly salary for a period of 6 months. Now, upon meeting these requirements, they can access up to 50 million naira to be paid back in over 30 years. In 2020, a report by the Central Bank of Nigeria reveals while 84% of 21,450 loan applications received in 4 years were approved, only 16.4% of the loans were disbursed. The NHF blames this on conflicting laws.
The law establishing the National Housing Fund requires that the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria shall not issue or disburse loans to primary mortgage banks more than 50% of their shareholders' fund unimpaired by losses on an annual basis.
In addition to this concern, stakeholders believe the capital base of the Federal Mortgage Bank falls short of the demand for mortgage due to poor commitment of statutory contributors.
Commercial merchant banks have not been contributing. Insurance companies have not been contributing. Federal government has not been making available loans.
Data published by Statista in 2022 puts the number of Nigerian workers at 60 million, majority of whom work in the private sector, with an even higher number in the informal sector. This means more Nigerians are outside the bracket of the NHF, as only about 6 million are registered contributors of the scheme.
Operators in the informal sector have opportunity to form cluster groups through the instrumentality of cooperative societies, and then we allow them to obtain our loans for construction of houses for members of the cooperative.
When you deduct 2.5%, it will take numbers to be able to build a house from the contributions of workers alone.
In 2016, former President Muhammadu Buhari's administration initiated the National Housing Program. Of the 6,022 housing units built for construction in 46 sites across Nigeria, 2,864 are said to have been completed, with others at various stages of completion. A report by Daily Trust in April 2024 says many of the houses across Nigeria remain unoccupied, with some of the roofs already blown off.
We are going to be constituting what we call recovery task teams. We have 7 of them, one for each geopolitical zone of the country, and the task of these teams is to analyze all of these estates that you are talking about, and we determine in each case what is the best way out.
Corruption has eaten up the gap such that if a civil servant is buying a house of, let's say, 2 million for 15 million naira, I can tell you that 5 million naira would go into processing fees and the chain of command.
Leave the construction to the private sector. Government at all levels are only expected to provide an enabling and a level playing ground that at least will guarantee the prospects and prestige of the developers. Estate development loan has been suspended for a very long time, so we as developers were not accessing the fund now.
The estate development loan window was suspended because it was not properly managed. We had occasions where estates were located in unsuitable locations, or houses were completed without particular target markets, and then so when the projects are completed, there are no off-takers.
In September 2023, Vice President Kashim Shettima said 28 million housing units are required to breach Nigeria's housing deficit. Experts say more investors from the private sector should be encouraged to partner with government in creating access to affordable houses for millions of Nigerians hoping to become homeowners someday. Ayuba, Ilya, Just Nigeria.
Housing is a basic human need that should be guaranteed for all.